The answer was that I shouldn't. It was too difficult. The soldiers just had to do whatever they could at the time. Of course, that is no way to command men in action. So I spoke to a contact at the Israeli embassy in London and asked him to arrange for their defence attaché to brief me. No, he said, I can do better than that. And he had an IDF Brigadier General flown over to London 2 days later, an officer who was considered to be Israel's leading expert on countering suicide attack. He and I spent 4 hours sitting in a hotel lobby in West London, him talking and me writing. What he told me became the British Army's policy for countering suicide attack in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and remains so today. That selfless act of an Israeli comrade in arms undoubtedly saved many British soldiers' lives. Tonight, in Afghanistan, British, Commonwealth, some Irish, and American soldiers' lives are also being saved by Israeli counter-terrorist technology and techniques. What I hope will be further steps in the many decades of cooperation between British and Israeli forces was manifested last week by the very successful visit to Israel of the British Chief of the Defence Staff, General Sir David Richards, who I know places a very high value on our military relationships with the IDF. Today, as yesterday, Israel is on the front line of the international conflict in which British and other Commonwealth countries are also engaged. In that struggle, which shows no signs of abating, perhaps the opposite even, we Western democratic nations must cooperate to defeat those who threaten us. Ladies and gentlemen, for most of us, the month of November is a poignant time. In Britain, as in many other countries, November is traditionally a month of remembrance. It is the month in which we and many other countries honour our war dead, a tradition dating back to the armistice on November the 11th, 1918, that marked the end of the First World War. I would like to conclude my comments by returning to General Sir Edmund Allenby. Now, I know that Israel's National Day of Remembrance does not fall at this time of year. I know also that during the first year of Israel's existence, her politicians, in typical Israeli fashion, if you don't mind a mere Brit making such an observation, her politicians were unable to agree on a date for Memorial Day. As the year came to a close, by the way, our politicians are just as bad. All due respect to those politicians in the world. As the year came to a close, without a decision, the Memorial Day was celebrated on Israel's first Independence Day in 1949, and continued that way until a decision was finally reached in 1951. So, although Israel's Fallen Soldiers' Day does not lie in the month of November, I think General Allenby's words at the dedication of a war memorial at Deal on the south coast of England in November 1925 apply to Israel's fallen exactly as they do to Britain's. And I quote from General Allenby: "This memorial is a visible symbol of what is invisible, of that which we carry in our hearts, the memory of and the gratitude to those who suffered, fought and died for us. No one except those that fought alongside those whose memories are perpetuated here can have the least idea of what their endurance was, the awful suffering that our men went through, in cold, in heat, in drought, in wet and mud, in desert, in every sort of climate, every sort of horrible experience. No one could have carried through with it unless it was well known that they were remembered, that they were in the hearts of their countrymen and of their friends at home, and that did carry them through. And those who have died for us have now entered into the light of heaven, and even as they stepped into heaven, the light shone, the full glory of heaven shone into their unblinking eyes, and they passed into the presence of God. Gentlemen, unafraid, conscious of their work finished, conscious that they had now earned the reward which is now theirs. They are now in the light, and through the doors of heaven there is a gleam that comes through to us. We know that the light is there, we know that we have their example before us, and that the gleam that we can see through the doors of heaven is a beacon light that will guide our steps forever along the road of high endeavour. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that on that November day in 1925, 86 years ago this week, uppermost in General Allenby's thoughts were the brave soldiers from Israel, Britain, and the Commonwealth who fell facing the enemy in his remarkable campaign in Palestine in 1917 and 1918. A campaign whose bloody battles added the reality of action on the ground, most notably through the liberation of Jerusalem, to the words of hope that were delivered by the British government to the Jewish people just 1 month earlier when the Balfour Declaration was signed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.